Meow and welcome to Banned Books Conversations, where radical readers discuss prohibited prose. I'm your host, Tonya Todd, and we're here to talk about banned books, literary works that have been removed from a library shelf or school curriculum. Over the course of Banned Books Week, this series will cover 7 different books, the reasons they were banned, and the value in reading them. Today's book is And Tango Makes Three by Justin Richardson and Peter Parnell. It may surprise you that this sweet children's book is on the banned books list, but before we get to that, let's meet today's radical readers. Ria, please tell us a bit about yourself, who you are and what you do.
Hello, I am Ria. I am the creator and producer and co-host of the Fem podcast, which I do with the wonderful Tonya and our co-hosts Alison, Ada and Jess. And we talk about anything feminist, in pop culture, in the world, in rants around questions. I am the creator of Ria's Questions, of which my lovely husband writes down random questions that I have asked, and then I go and ask it to the Fem Collective and the rest of the world. And just geek, horror lover, LGBTQI plus supporter, part of that community as well. So I'm saying that obviously because of what this book is about.
How about you, Diamond? Introduce yourself, tell us who you are and what you do.
My name is Diamond, and I am currently a stay-at-home mom of a lovely little boy, but I also am a consultant for an up-and-coming nonprofit right now called We Have a Voice. It is run by 2 women, and it is a nonprofit for youth and families who live in underprivileged communities, and they are working to get families to work in activities, fellowship, do community outreach, provide resources to those who they want to teach and empower to talk about the things that they're going through and instill the importance of overcoming adverse circumstances. And so my work in the nonprofit world has come to use to help them, and that's kind of what I've been focusing on right now, because it is a great mission. And both Ali and Soledad, the 2 women who run the nonprofit, they are the co-founders, are wonderful ladies, and I really appreciate that they're putting in this time and effort to help people who probably don't have as much help as they think they do.
And they have been guests on Active Activism. So I'm glad to hear that you are supporting them. Of course, you're the reason that I was introduced to them. And I happen to notice you have an amazing shirt on today. I know that the viewers can see it, but people listening, will you read it for them so that they can see or they can hear what it says?
Yes, it comes from a Tupac song called Keep Your Head Up, if you are familiar. It says, and since a man can't make one, he has no right to tell a woman when and where to create one.
Thank you very much. And on that note, let's introduce our male panelist.
The token male guy. Huh?
You're not a token. I asked you all because you're parents.
You were interesting.
Not a token.
Now it makes sense. Now I know why I'm here, because I'm sitting here, and I'm Kev, by the way. I am Kev. I'm the host of the Everything is Awesome podcast that does no good work whatsoever. We just sit around and talk about pop culture and I guess being positive, but sometimes we get a little negative when necessary. We're launching a podcast called Avatar State Radio. I've never watched the show Avatar: The Last Airbender. My co-host has watched everything Avatar. So we're kind of going down that path together. One experienced, one not. But yeah, I came into this feeling very performed for this because I'm like, oh well, these are all good people. I am literally I make jokes. So thank you for inviting me on this esteemed panel.
When we spoke on your show, you were very supportive of the Banned Books Initiative, and that was one of the reasons I put your name down as a future guest. And then this one just happened to be a children's book, so I thought he would be a great one for this particular show. So please don't feel like you need credentials to be part of this conversation. You're in this world, and we all have a valuable voice. And isn't it funny that we're telling the token white male that your voice matters?
See, I am the self deprecating kind of guy. So I never mean it. I know how lucky I am to be who I am, and I try to use that for good when I can.
Well, I appreciate that. So why don't you tell us what it is about the banned books conversation that interests you?
So for me, and I thought about this today, it's especially reading this book, and I don't want to get to that necessarily, but it is wild to me that banned books are even a thing. And I think that's what interests me is, you know, maybe I don't know how many banned books I've actually read, to be honest with you. And this was very eye-opening, this experience, to get ready for this podcast, because I don't understand why it's banned, and I have more on that later, for sure. But yeah, I'm interested because of why are we banning books?
How about you, Diamond?
Well, I kind of have been interested in talking about books that are banned since I was younger. Part of it was because growing up, my parents were very anti-censorship. And so it was something that we were always encouraged to read, no matter what it was, whether we agreed or disagreed, because it was always education. And there are always things that you have the possibility of learning, even if it's not something you necessarily agree with. And another aspect of that was reading Fahrenheit 451. I really, really liked that book. And a part of it was the rebellion. Like, I'm going to read this anyway, because this is something that's good for me. And ever since then, I've always been interested in having these kinds of conversations, especially with things that are so good. I feel like reading is just so good for people. And to take that away from anyone, especially kids, just blows my mind.
And Ria?
I mean, it's a mixture of both of your answers, really. Books are so powerful, and banning them, I fall on the same as Kev. I'm like, why? Just why? And I sit there and I listen to the podcasts and I read the blog articles and the news stories about it, and I cannot ever get on the side of people who want to ban books. I just cannot do it. And I want to see all sides, but I can't. And so I just find the conversation so fascinating. I found your series so fascinating. You know, this is your third year of doing it now. And every time you do an episode, I learn something that is important. I'm 41 years old and I'm still learning. And by listening and taking part in these conversations, I'm having to do some work and think about things. And I sort of like that challenge as well.
So, Diamond, have you ever had an experience with a book that offended you? And how did you respond to that offense, if so?
I actually don't think I have. I mean, I can't think of anything that truly offended me in any way. And maybe it's because I've just tried to avoid them. Like, I read part of it or read a synopsis or something, and if I don't think I like it, then I don't read it. But you know, that's my choice to do that. It's not because I think that other people shouldn't have the opportunity to read it as well. But I can't think of anything that I've been offended by in that sense.
How about you,
Maybe,
Ria? Oh, go ahead.
sorry. I was just going to say maybe history books, because they're not exactly accurate. So I can't say I'm necessarily completely offended when I read them because I was in school, but in retrospect, maybe it offends me that it's not exactly 100% true.
That's fair. Ria?
Yeah, that's such an interesting point, isn't it? Sort of, as we grow older, the things that we are taught in education, we realize it's just one viewpoint is the polite way of saying it, or just outright lies, and how history is written by certain people and that's what we learn. And isn't that what books can then, and these conversations can then counteract, right? we don't have time to talk about that. I said I'd try and not go on to Ria rants or jump ahead, so I'm not going to. I've read books that I don't like the writing or the story's not for me. I wouldn't say I'm offended by them. I just go, that's not for me, and that's okay. I think I've read stuff that makes me feel uncomfortable. I don't necessarily think that is a bad thing. I actually think that's a really good thing. And I just sort of cannot think. Every time you ask this question, I've tried to think of a book where I've been like, I'm truly offended. And last time I did talk about a book which I sort of fundamentally disagreed with by a writer who I absolutely love. But I just stopped reading it and everything was fine.
How about you, Kevin?
It's kind of piggybacking on an early answer of like, I agree with what both you guys said, because I stay away from things I don't like because I don't want to be negative about it, about any experience. And what by I don't like, not because it's a viewpoint I don't agree with, it's just, oh, this is a writing I just don't like, or an author I'm not genuinely a fan of. I mean, that's maybe the biggest offense, is bad writing, right? Like for me, is I've never really found anything that's offensive to me subject matter wise, save for going to Diamond's answer about the education system, and that's not something you discover until you're well out of it as a 40-year-old, and someone who that book was probably, those books were written from the point of view from, I don't realize until I'm out of that bubble of suburban white kid, right, that I learn, oh, I was taught all the wrong things. So those are like the biggest offenses. And I think the way you deal with that is do your own research to educate yourself and be open to those other points of views.
So Ria, is there a scenario in which you feel that banning a book is the correct course of action?
No, apart from, I'm building on a previous answer from last year, diet books. I'm still holding strong, and I know other people in our conversation disagreed, but I think they are the bane of society. I mean, there's many other things that are terrible about society. I'm in the UK at the moment. We're imploding, so awesome. Oh, it's great, guys. Calm down the manic energy. So no, it's the short answer. I don't feel like banning a book is the correct course of action. I think banning books is incredibly dangerous. I think making knowledge only available for the few and censoring knowledge is incredibly bad for society as a whole, as well as damaging for individuals. I just don't think there is. I think, it's when we're watching TV shows and films now, and we get the warning at the beginning about how like they're not, scrubbing Peter Pan, something I brought up every single time, the horrific characterization of Indigenous people. And instead, we need to have conversations about it. And I think if you are unhappy with something in a book, have a conversation about it instead of taking it off the table for other people, because that book could be a lifeline for somebody else. And I think you are then controlling and coercively controlling that person's life. And who do you think you are to have that right? I didn't rant.
You didn't rant. And I'm going to ask you to expand on something because you didn't. It's okay to repeat things that you've said in previous years because we may be speaking to a new audience. So tell us a bit more about why you would be on board with banning diet books, and then what your concerns are with Peter Pan.
Okay, so I think that diet books are a what's the word? It's when somebody gives you a potion and it's not real. What's the word? I can't think of it. Oh my God, everybody's looking at me. It's fine. But it's not a real thing. I think health, wellness and fitness and people's lives, all of that stuff that we adhere to is massively racist because it's racist and sexist. It's all based on white men from like the 1930s and 40s. And there is something inherently wrong with the way we express how we expect society to be healthy and well. And I think diet books feed specifically into that. And I think they're charlatans. That's what I'm looking for. I think people who write diet books are absolute charlatans. And so that's why I think, but I also think whatever, if you're going to get the how do French women stay thin diet book and it makes you happy, go for it. However, I feel like they should all come with a health warning, and we should all dismantle how we feel about health and wellness, and basically how so much of it is white people trying to tell everybody else what to do based on ridiculous standards and untrue science and all of that crap. Go listen to Maintenance Phase. It's a podcast that does what I'm trying to say way better. It's a fantastic podcast. Do it, support it. Peter Pan. So I was out shopping with my daughter. She is now 5, and we were going through some books, and she wanted to get a book of Peter Pan. And I was like, the Disney film Peter Pan, not the original. And I was like, absolutely fine. Grab it. It's like 20p or whatever. Take it home. And we were reading it. And whilst reading it, I was changing the words of Indian to Indigenous people and not having a conversation about it. I was just going right past it and not having a conversation about it. And then I listened to Banned Books. I was on a walk and I was listening to the first season of Banned Books. And I just had this epiphany of, I am avoiding the issue by changing the words because she can't read, rather than talking about it. And I made and I wrote it in our Discord, and I made a promise to myself and to everybody in the Comics in Motion Discord that I would then read it properly and have a proper conversation with her. And that's what the Banned Books conversation did. So I then went, and the next time we read it, I used the word Indian, and I said to her, we don't use that word anymore. This is the reason why. Obviously, in like language, she was 4 at the time for a 4-year-old. I wasn't like making it super complex. But, and it's things like she now listens to the audiobook of it, and there is a song in it, What Makes the Red Man Red? And she listens to that and goes, and she has a thought about that, and she goes, what does that mean? And we have a conversation about it. And I realized just by censoring this thing, because I wasn't comfortable having the conversation at that particular time. And I talked to her about loads of things. It's just I wasn't in the right space. But I realized that I had to be in the right space to have these conversations. I have to be prepared to be open and have these conversations about difficult subjects. And I need to equip her in going forward to be able to point out and understand these injustices and terms that people shouldn't use. And so that's my Peter Pan story.
Well, that was definitely worth repeating, because we all need that reminder that this opens the door for important conversations, and that sometimes it is easier to just censor ourselves or censor the book to avoid that conversation. So I'm glad you repeated it, because I didn't remember I remembered what your concern was. I didn't remember how you handled it. So it was a good reminder for me too. How about you, Kevin? Is there a scenario that you feel banning a book is ever the correct course of action?
This is like such a fine line to walk, because you become the hypocrite if you have an answer to this almost. And I think that banning books overall is bad, right? But then you have scenarios where maybe there's a book that says how to be a pedophile. That's a bad book. Like, that should probably be banned. So I think that there is, and maybe banning is not the right word, but there is, I think, scenarios where when there is something that is truly bad, truly evil, that we kind of all universally agree with, that I think it makes sense, right? And that's, I mean, that's a pretty easy one to go to when you're talking about hurting a child. in any fashion, that could be worth the discussion. Is this a book that we ban? Obviously, if it's something a little less triggery, where it's physical abuse, which is still bad, that is maybe not the level of banning, because you want to have those conversations. As someone who works adjacent to child welfare, I have those discussions with my own kids all the time about, like, hey, this is like why it's wrong to do XYZ when you are disciplining your kids and stuff. And so it's a fine line. And I feel like a hypocrite saying, yes, I think there are scenarios. And then you get into, well, who makes that decision, right?
Mhm.
And as the white guy here, I feel really weird having to have this conversation, because unfortunately, it is usually people that look like me that are making these decisions, for better or most often for worse. So it's a fine line. And I guess the short answer is yes. Yes, I think there are scenarios, but they are so far and few between. And I don't think it should be me or people that look like me making those decisions. I don't think there's a good answer to say, like, how you go about managing banning books, because again, universally, I think that's a bad thing to do, but there are those little areas that, like, should we really be promoting Nazism? And again, when we're talking about it in a historical standpoint, I don't think we should be banning it. We should be talking about that history because it's bad, and I mean, we're reliving it almost practically on a daily basis to some degree, where you have far right point of views dictating what's happening in our world. So I think, like, that obviously is an important conversation, but if you're having a book that is like so pro Nazism in 2024, is that a discussion to ban? Maybe. I mean, certainly I think so, but that, I don't know. It's a fine line. I hated this question, Tonya. I hated this question because it made me feel all kinds of things.
Which is why it needs to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree with that. I do agree with that. And as I said, that to say yes to that question is to be a hypocrite to some degree. And there's also a fine line. And I don't know, it's such a hard thing to answer. But yes, I think there are scenarios. As a short answer, I think there are scenarios where we should, as a human race, say, maybe not this book.
And how about you, Diamond?
My answer to the question was the scenario in which you feel banning books is appropriate, or the right course of action, is in your own home. That's about as far as I take it. That, I mean, I don't really know how it works in stores and stuff. Like, everybody has a certain amount of inventory that they can have. So maybe you just don't choose the books that are Nazism or something like that. I was just putting it out there because that was the last thing that was said. But it's not necessarily that a state or a government or a government entity is saying that it's not allowed in a place for education. But if it's a private owned business, you don't have to put stuff out there that you don't want to. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be allowed to put it out there if you want to. It should be able to go.
Are about the school curriculum and library, so open to the public, those things like that, not necessarily a store.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes more sense. But I still think the same thing. I think that, I mean, a part of the reason why I think that, and even though these situations are, like, those situations that were brought up are bad, I think that I would, as someone who likes to educate myself, I would want to know these people that feel this way. I would want to know the things that they're writing, because it tells me what to prepare for and how to counter that. Because if we don't know that it exists, if we don't know that it's there, because we're not putting it out there, then people find a way, and they have to do it in secret instead. And I want that information out there. I want to know, this person wrote this book and I need to stay away, or this person wrote this book and they could be a threat. And we need to stop someone like that from expanding or making it possible for their stuff to happen, and or for something evil or bad to happen, because we have that information. I feel like we can always use it to our advantage to make society better. And so I still think my answer is still, it should be in your own home. If you don't want it in your house, then don't bring it into your home. But if it's out there, then kids know, hey, this Joe Schmo who wrote this book probably wants to avoid them. Or as a parent as well.
So Kevin, we'll start with you this time. And what is the value, if any, in reading books that might be considered offensive by some?
Well, I think it kind of piggybacks off what, Diamond just said, is that's informing yourself, right? And, in the context that I think we're really talking about banned books, and that's books that shouldn't be banned, like the book we're discussing today, like it, as a cisgender white dude who is, it's very helpful to understand the queer community better when I'm reading a book like And Tango Makes Three, or any kind of queer book. Jadzia Axelrod wrote Galaxy the Prettiest Superstar for DC Comics, and that book is literally about a transgender superhero, and it was not something I am familiar with at all. And reading that book, that is, I know, offensive to a whole lot of people, it helped me understand not only the queer community better, but being a trans person better. And it's done in a way that I really enjoy because I love superheroes. I think that the importance of reading these books is you broaden your point of view, or at least your understanding of other point of views. And we're definitely living in a world now that is not as so closed as it was even 40 years ago. And reading these books with other point of views, I think just it helps you have these harder discussions that need to be had.
How about you, Ria?
My glib answer is, if it's banned, I'm going to read it. Because of the people who are banning books, I'm not on the same side as them, and I would therefore like to read it, and therefore probably enjoy it. It'd probably be about things that I'm interested in. But the more serious answer is it's the same. It's knowledge, it's education. It's about going into a world that's different to mine. It's about hearing other voices, and that's so important. My voice is not the only voice in the world, and I need to listen to others to help make the world a better place, and not in I'm going to be the savior ways, and I need to do my own education. I need to do the work myself to be able to create space for other people. As a parent, I need to do that to make the world better for my child. I am worried about the world that she is living in. It scares me. So what can I do? I can empower her. I can give her knowledge. I can give her information. I can prepare her. And that is my role as a parent. It is not to fix everything for her, but it's to give her the strength and the knowledge that she needs to go out into the world and hopefully live a full and fulfilling life. And so for me, it is, just because you think it's offensive, it doesn't mean that it is. And I need to go out and make my own decisions and thoughts about that. I need to, I can't think of the right word, but, I cannot spend all my time being influenced by people who are telling me what they think is right and wrong. I need to go out and do that myself. And I think if you say a book is offensive, one, I am probably going to go, yay. But two, I'm also probably going to go, well, there's clearly something in there that I need to read and go and do the work for and understand.
Diamond.
First, I want to apologize for moving around so much. There were a bunch of bees that came around. So I really didn't want to be in that area anymore. But to answer the question about the value of reading books, I mean, it also goes based off of kind of what has been said, is and in general, reading books is education and educating ourselves, and kind of to continue off of what was said about educating our kids and allowing them to figure out if they're offended by it or not, and to have their own thoughts about the situations that they may be coming across, and ask questions. One of the things that I've talked to a few people about is my son is very curious. He's very explorative. He likes to touch new things. He likes to crawl everywhere. And I told my grandmother, I said, did I shoot myself in the foot because I'm not the parent who just, sits him in front of the TV and says, please watch this so that I can get the dishes done, And not to say that there's a problem with kids watching TV. I'm just saying I encourage him to explore instead in that way. I encourage his creativity in that realm. And I think that books can do the same thing. It makes you think so much. And I think it makes kids think a lot. And I feel like as a society, we should encourage that. We continuously want to improve. The reason we have things like cell phones is because someone thought differently than everybody else. And to hold that back from anyone is insane, because you would just stay in the same place. And anybody who wants to stay in the same place is just not creative enough for the human world.
So in recent years, there's been a pattern in the themes of which books get banned. And Diamond, we'll start with you. What do you think this pattern says about where we are as a society?
Give me a second. Think about the words I want to say. I think that social media and the internet has allowed information to spread very quickly. And the reason that we see these patterns more often now is because of it. I think that they kind of have always existed. I don't think that it's something that's relatively new, but now it's something that can be talked about because something happened in Washington State and someone in Iowa can read about it and learn about it and know something about it and speak about it. That's not something that existed, I don't know, 20, 30 years ago, or it would happen in the same day. Maybe I'm wrong, but I didn't experience it as a kid, so I just assumed that it's not something that was there. And I think that now we're just seeing the patterns quicker and are able to respond to it faster. And because of that, it's a good thing, because we're able to address it in whichever way we deem is necessary to stop the banning of books and allow anyone and everyone to be a part of the community that the author is trying to bring out in their stories. Does that answer the question?
Some.
Yeah. That's all I have to say, though.
Okay. What are your thoughts, Kevin?
Well, I mean, I think it shows, to Diamond's point, how fast, fake news, fake information can travel, because of the internet. And as someone who grew up without the internet, in the late 80s and early 90s, you didn't have that. On the other side of it, you couldn't find your group, right? Like, it was so hard to find the fellow nerds. I was part of that generation where if you watched Star Wars, you were put in a locker. You weren't asking girls out on dates to go see Star Wars. I just think that, we're seeing the very loud minority be able to spread their information so much quicker. And that is why we're seeing like such a rush to ban books, because people that are banning these, I don't think are reading them judged off the book that I read for this podcast. So, that's the issue is there's too much information that's wrong, moving along too quickly, that other people that are like-minded for whatever reason are just grabbing onto and trying to ban these books for reasons I don't understand.
Ria.
Yeah, for me, it's all about these pockets of society that are scared. They're scared that they don't have the same control that they used to have. When we talk about parents banning books in schools, there's no way they've read those books, but the control they have is their home and their beliefs, and they want to be in a pocket society that has those beliefs and what they consider to be good values, whether they are or not. I think we all know where I fall on that line. And it's the fear of something different. It's the fear of, well, if I don't have control of this, what will happen? If I don't control what my kids read, what will happen? And not in the good way, not in the good way of I try to, I've spoken to Tonya about it. For me, it's all about diverse books and reading different things with my daughter. And so I do control that, but I don't, it's not about sort of you can't learn anything new. And it's that fear. There's so much fear in society now. And, the people in power, traditionally cis, white, straight men, feel like things are being taken away from them. And so rather than looking at equity like a good thing, that we all will benefit from it and it will make the world fantastic and brilliant, they see it as a thing to fear. And now when we talk about banned books, and I don't know the statistics on this, but I was reading it earlier today and it's all fallen out of my head. We know there's a lot of women, of mums, who are putting petitions forward to ban books. Women are victims of the patriarchy and can uphold the patriarchal system just as bad as mediocre white men. So it's just these, so it is a pattern. It's just these same people who have control. When we think about control in society, we're talking about white men, white women, and then so many other things are underneath, if you look at it with intersectionality. And it's these people who have power, who are trying to decide how the rest of the world live because they're so scared of what they see as the power slipping through their fingers. That's not what was in my notes. That's just what my brain said, and that's what I went for.
So now it's time to get into today's specific banned book. And Tango Makes Three is an award-winning picture book based on the true story of two male penguins hatching and parenting a baby chick at New York's Central Park Zoo. It received starred reviews from School Library Journal, Publishers Weekly, and Booklist, and it earned recognition as an ALA Notable Children's Book and a Nick Jr. Family Magazine Best Book of the Year. Yet, since its publication in 2005, And Tango Makes Three frequently tops the list of most challenged and banned books. When I presented the list of books for this year's conversations, Ria immediately leapt toward this one. Why was that, Ria?
Yes, so And Tango Makes Three. It's such a good book. So I remember this book when it was first published. I remember the story in all the newspapers about the gay penguins at Central Park Zoo, and was like, it's awesome, penguins. Literally, I recall that being my only thought about it at the time. Cool, penguins, gay, lovely. And then when the book came out, I remember people being excited about it, and then also I remember the controversy surrounding it. And then when I was pregnant and I was thinking about how I want to parent, it was one of the books that would always come up when I was doing research and stuff like that. But I didn't actually read it until I started a job in social work. So I'm a communications professional. So I worked with social workers who work specifically with children. And it was their number one recommended book for all children who have families who are slightly different to the normal 2.4 family. And I sat down one lunchtime in the break area and I got it off the shelf because we had lots of books on the shelves, and I read it and I was like, not only is this book beautiful and awesome, but it's great, it's telling the story, about these penguins and different diverse families. I am now going to read it with my daughter. And that's basically exactly what happened. And it's such a beautiful book. And the fact that it talks about the different kinds of, I mean, I think this is actually on the sticker. I was about to say the different kinds of love that make a family. It's literally on the sticker. It's not even original thought I just had there. It's on there. I just think it's so, that's what makes it so special. It is about a gay couple, but actually it's just about different types of family. So any child can read this and see their family reflected in it.
And I think that the illustrations make that point as well, because when you look at the families visiting the zoo, the artist made a point to include all different types of families there.
Yeah, very first page, there's a woman with a pushchair, there's two women with a child, there's and so you get that, but you also get it when there's what looks like to be an older woman with two children. When you get there and you look at the animals, you can't tell if the animals are male or female.
Right.
It doesn't matter because it's
and
not
in terms
important.
of ethnic background as well, when you look at the different families, it's just all different shades, shapes, sizes, and pairings.
Because funnily enough, that's what families are. Not going on a rant.
So, Kevin, how did you first learn about this book?
I know the book itself, I believe, because of this podcast, to be perfectly honest. The
It's
story,
not the first time we've heard that, so don't worry about that.
but the story is familiar. Like, I seem to remember something in the back of my brain about a couple of gay penguins. It is, you don't, I've read this book and I'm like, and I'm looking right now, I'm looking at the one of the first spreads with the penguins. And to your guys' point, like, you don't know which one's a boy, which one's a girl, and obviously they're illustrations. And in real life, when I look at penguins, that was a very Cumberbatch way to say penguins right there.
That's exactly what I was about to say beforehand. I was going to message everybody and say, who's going to Cumberbatch this?
It was me. But like, even in real life, I don't know what a boy and girl penguin look like. I'm sure that the people that work at the zoo do. I'm sure there's a way to know it. But like, anyone reading this book and anyone going to the zoo and looking at a couple penguins or red pandas or whatever animals you like to look at, you can't tell. It doesn't matter. And that, what a great metaphor for how we should be in society when it comes to a family dynamic. Like, what do I care what your family looks like? Are you happy? Are you in love? Perfect.
How about you, Diamond?
So I also learned about this book from the podcast as well. Is there a second part to the question, or is it just
No, just
where we learned about
how
it?
did you first learn about it? And then I'll continue with, prior to reading it, what elements attracted your attention?
So when I just read I just saw the front page or the front cover and what it was, and I knew it was banned books. So I thought, okay, this is a children's book. It's about parents and a child, regular man, woman, child book, not likely to be banned. So I assumed it was related to either two women or two men represented in the book is the reason why it was banned. And it reminded me of another book that I have purchased recently, actually, called Pringle and Finn, The Pen Grooms. It is written and drawn by a blind artist, or mostly blind artist. His name is Paul Castle. And it is very similar. He also has posted a voicemail. I don't know if there's more than one, but it was at least one where someone had said they weren't going to put his books out because it is about multiple types of families. And the first one is about these two penguin males who are making wedding cakes for the different types of weddings. And it is man woman, it is woman woman, it is man man, and it's all different animals. It's penguins. I'm pretty sure it's penguins who are the main cake makers, but there are flamingos. There are mice, I believe. I think there was a water animal, but it's just different types of animals, and it's all about wedding cakes. And then in the end, there are these two penguins with rainbow bow ties, and it's just so cute. And it made me think of that there's another penguin story about two male penguins, and they have a kid, and that is actually the second book that he writes, called The Secret Ingredient, where he talks about families, and then these two male penguins are able to have a family and raise another penguin. And there's so much about it that is just centered around love. And my middle name is Aphrodite, so I'm all about love. And I think it's just so wonderful to hear and read stories about that, because these families exist in the world. And so having more books that are representative of that is important. And I don't want to go too much into it, but just as a mixed woman, I don't see that representation for myself as much. And so to see that for any underrepresented or underprivileged community brings joy, because there are so many things to love about so many different people. And the fact that these stories are coming out is so great. And the last part of it is that this is a true story. Like, these are two animals who genuinely did this, and a person at a zoo who genuinely did this for these two penguins that just loved each other and hung out with each other and are taking care of and raising a child together. And I don't know if anybody else wants to talk about nature and all of that stuff and what certain entities' intentions are, but I think for animals that we deem don't have as much intelligence or free will as we do, for that to be their natural reaction to do that, then it would be the natural reaction for any animal that was created under the sun to love another being the way that they want to. And now I'm done with my rant.
Very valuable points, because there's the representation and just nature. There are many animals in the animal kingdom that have same-sex pairings. They just choose that. It's perfectly natural, and the rest of the animal kingdom is just fine with that. That it's not it's not a reason to start wars over, and they don't get killed over it. They just accept it. It's what they want, and they go about their business. I feel like we didn't get an answer to this question from Ria or Kevin. Do either of you have anything to add to what attracted your attention to this before we move on?
I think Diamond summed it up perfectly, especially at the end there. I mean, as someone who's just dealt with losing a pet literally within the last 24 hours, it's eye-opening to really see how much more emotionally intelligent animals are. And we don't give, I think, animals enough credit of how smart they are. And it doesn't necessarily mean intelligence, but just overall, they're far smarter, at least than me. I won't put all of humanity on blast, but yeah, I mean, the emotional intelligence is wonderful with these animals.
Ria, anything more to add?
No, you both summed it up beautifully, and also nearly made me cry.
So now that we have all read it, Ria, what do you think made Tango Makes Three polarizing to the point of being banned?
Because certain sections of society hate gay people, and they suck. Because you can love whoever you want to love, and you can be attracted to whoever you want to be, and fuck off. It's because I'm trying to not rant. We're talking about children's book, and I just really swore. I mean, and that's what it is, and that is the reason people were offended that a true story about penguins who both just happened to be male parented a chick, and like that is literally their entire problem with it. And isn't that bananas when you say it out loud. Isn't that bananas? But people who want to ban this, we clearly know how they feel about gay people. F off. Get in the bin, jog on. It's really hard not to rant.
That's all right. Diamond, what are your thoughts on that?
Agreed with everything that was just said as well, for sure. I also think that people have been empowered lately with how much division there is, specifically in this country, with minority communities. That there are a lot of people who have been empowered to feel like they can say things like, this book doesn't belong here, we shouldn't have this here. And I remember watching something about a representative who said that we need to protect children from this stuff because they shouldn't be around it. And we can infringe on people's First Amendment rights because we're protecting them, and just how hypocritical it is that we can protect them in this capacity, but we can't protect their literal lives right now. And it's just very interesting that it really shows people's priorities. And inherently, it's about them. It's about you. It's about how you feel. And you feel like you're being attacked or whatever. And so you need to attack others too. Misery loves company. That's what it is. Misery loves company. And either they feel badly about themselves, or they were never taught to love the way that we should love each other. And so they just decide that no one should get to feel that way. And too much of life right now is empowering those kinds of people in the world.
Kevin.
I've been thinking about this question all day because there's nothing polarizing in this book. I was wondering why, and the answer is quite simply, as Ria said, like, gay penguins, bro. Like, that's what people have an issue with. And there's nothing, they're not even beating it over your head about the queer couple. It's literally just two penguins that happen to be dudes that happen to want to hatch a rock, and a guy who is a nice person's like, oh, you know what, here's an egg that's going to die if I don't give it any parents. So it's yeah, just gay penguins is why people have an issue with this book. And it's clearly the people who want to ban this book are people who have not read it. All they know is about two gay penguins, and that's all they care about. And to protect the kids, they want to ban the book. And to just kind of throw to a George Carlin bit, those people only care about kids when they're in the womb. Once they're out, they kind of stop caring, unless it's about whatever makes them uncomfortable, including the queer community.
So I did a little bit of research on this, and according to PEN America, a nonprofit that tracks book bans, this book was one of the most removed books from library shelves in recent years. It has been challenged and banned so many times, I cannot possibly list them all, but I do have some highlights for us. So there are several instances all over the place of it being removed from the children's section to the children's nonfiction section. And that's as a result of some of the challenges, like that's their compromise, fine, we'll move it here. In Kansas, it was challenged and relocated for having queer content. It was pulled from Gibbs Elementary School in Rochester, Minnesota, as inappropriate for elementary students and removed from school library shelves. It was marked for removal in the Davis School District in Utah because parents might find it objectionable. Not that anyone did, just they might. It was withdrawn from 2 Bristol, England, UK primary schools following objection from parents. It was challenged but retained in Dublin, Ohio, despite a parent's concerns that the book is based on one of those subjects that is best discovered by students in another time or in another place. It was challenged but retained in North Kansas City, Missouri schools, despite a parent's concern that the book wasn't age appropriate and the accusation that it tries to indoctrinate children about homosexuality. And it was one of 3 books about gay couples withdrawn from libraries in Singapore where gay sex is illegal. So Ria, what are your thoughts on the reasons it was banned?
I mean, I hate them all, obviously. People suck. Jog on. It just shows people's prejudice, and it just shows, I think all it does is just show how much certain people suck. And Diamond and Kevin, you've both been so eloquent. I'm going to be the non-eloquent person because I just feel myself. You were saying that I feel myself getting look, I'm all wound up and getting myself so angry.
I asked you first for a reason.
Yeah, I know.
Give it to
Let
us.
me get it all out. And I just right, okay. It isn't good content, me just silently seething. But it just, and that's just like the top layer of all the reasons, of all the places that have banned it. And literally banning it because, it might make my child gay, it might make other children gay. First of all, you have no understanding about how any of that works, clearly. Like, it's not how being gay or bisexual or anything or straight works. Not how any of it works. Ugh, science. This is not coherent. I'm going to look at my notes. I just so angry. I didn't think I'd get this angry. Again, it's wanting to take something away. They want to take something away. And as adults, we should be giving, especially for children, we should be giving them knowledge, opportunities, understanding, kindness, safe spaces. And it's not doing that. I'm loving the libraries that were like, we'll just move it to non-fiction. I like those librarians and I would like to be their friends. It's a good, smart move. They're like, if that's what you want to do, this is literally real. I'll put it in with the history books. Is that what you want? Because that's what I'll do. Go librarians, support your local library. They're amazing. Anger. I'll stop there. Please be more coherent. Sorry, Kevin.
Diamond.
I mean, I have felt the same thing, just angry with people, disappointed, sad, because a lot of people who feel this way were taught to feel this way. This is something that they and people who experience it, who are a part of the queer community, they're made to feel like there's something wrong with them. And to make someone feel that way when all they want to do is love whomever they want to love, like to take love away from somebody is so harmful to a person's life, because then they don't feel that they deserve it. And that, I feel like that's the most harm that you can do to someone emotionally, mentally, because it takes so long for them to realize that they do deserve it, that they've done nothing wrong, that all they wanted to do was appreciate the beauty of somebody else. Like, a man thinks another man is beautiful and he wants to bask in that beauty. Why would you take that away from someone? Why does that hurt your feelings so much? It's literally a thought that I cannot grasp. I cannot understand it. And a part of it is because I was not educated that way, because I was not brought up in that kind of world. And so I can't even imagine thinking that way or feeling that way. And I don't think I would, even if I was raised to think that. I know that there are people in my life who have different opinions about these kinds of things, and I'm just like, are you stupid? Like, do you not have a way of expanding your mind to think beyond this wall that's right in front of you? And it really makes me sad. It makes me angry as well. But I think I feel sadness for the community that doesn't get to experience the love and appreciation that they genuinely deserve. And this was based on a true story. I mean, it was based on a true story and about two penguins, and people have to internalize it and make it about them and how they feel when it's just about two animals who raised a baby. Like, that should be so cute. We love the stories about wolves who adopt a baby from another species. I mean, wouldn't that be worse? Because they're two different types of animals, so they shouldn't be together. But no, they're of the same sex, and so that's the problem.
Kevin.
Yeah, it's wild that all those reasons you listed, right? I think anyone that's watched Deadpool 1, that's a lot more offensive than two penguins nose kissing. And I like both. They were both great for me. And as a cisgender white dude, I mean, there's nothing better than watching Hugh Jackman with his abs out. So, I think that this it's wild that people are looking at those types of things and not having similar reactions, because they are far more polarizing, and I love them. I love that stuff, but that's far more polarizing than the book that I read. There's the one thing you mentioned that Ria touched on as well, by having that book move to nonfiction, like, makes sense. Yes, shouldn't have to be done, but at least that's how they got around it, right? And that's a great way that they were able to stick to the man. And that's the only point that I heard you say that I was like, all right, that makes sense. Everything else was nonsense, and indicative of people who didn't read this book.
So do you think that this was more or less likely to become polarizing because it was a children's book and specifically aimed toward little children? Diamond.
Sorry, will you repeat the question?
Yes. Do you think that it was more or less likely to become polarizing because it was geared toward little children?
I guess more likely, just because it is kids, and I think it makes for an easier excuse, because little kids don't know any better. So you're putting these thoughts in their head and you're brainwashing them to think this, while you're brainwashing them to not think this. But I think that it's used as, or it's easier to make the excuse that, well, we shouldn't allow it because they don't know any better, and we need to make sure that we do the right thing. It's for the children. It's for the children. Yeah. But really, it's not about the children. It's about you. And it's just a very easy excuse to make it that way. That's all I have to say about it.
Ria.
Yeah, absolutely. The narrative is, we've got to save the children. Think of the children, the poor children. And it's like, as people, my two guests here who have children, we all know children literally don't care about this stuff, right? They literally don't care. I've read this book and many other books of different types of family, with my child, with other children, and they're like, cool, it's a story. And it's great. And like, I'm then like forcing conversations about, the kid in this story's, got no leg. How do you think that makes Joe feel? And she's like, probably a bit rubbish when everybody else is asking about it, but all of his friends are playing with him and it's great. She's just like, he's cool. He's pretending to be a pirate. Because kids are amazing and they don't care and they want to read, but they want to read books and see characters that reflect the people in their lives. Like, they want to read a book where it's like, that looks like my friend because they've got brown skin. That's cool to them. Like, oh, my friend's got two mums. There's two mums in this book. That's just like, I'm trying to not actually think of one of my daughter's friends' names. Like, that's just like Sarah's mums, and that's it. That's their entire thought process. That is cool because it's like this, or not even that. It's not, and we are putting this on children. We are putting grown-up ideas, morals of what we think is right, and I'm using like the royal we, onto children, and that's not their world. And a book like this is just telling the story of two penguins who happen to be in love, and they have a baby, and like that, it's obviously it's saying more, but if you boil it down to it, that's what this book is about, and that's what children are taking away from it. And isn't that wonderful that at some point one of the children reading this may realize that they are not heterosexual, and they can be like, oh yeah, cool, I know families like that are fine, I know that this feels fine. And they can feel safe because of a book about penguins. Stop ruining awesome gay penguins. They're the best. Don't ruin penguins. Everything gets ruined. Do not ruin awesome gay penguins. It happened in real life, and even if it didn't, have you watched cartoons? You know, it's a female skunk because she's got blimmin' eyelashes. Skunks don't have big mascara eyelashes. I'm stopping.
Kevin.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely, because it's a kid's book, people have made it more polarizing. And I don't think there's anything better I can say than Diamond and Ria here. Other than that, like if it was about the kids, there would be free lunches and free breakfast. If it was about the kids, you would care about them beyond the womb. So they make it about the kids, but it's not.
So what emotional reaction did you have as a reader, Kevin?
I mean, as a reader of just a fantastic book, I was smiling. It was great. It was a heartwarming story about two penguins. We've said it a few times. A heartwarming story about two penguins having a kid. And that story is, it satisfies the queer community, an adopted story. For me, what I see is just a happy family. That's the story I see, because I'm not adopted. I don't have any adopted kids. I'm a straight guy. As of now, I don't have any queer kids in my family. Who knows? We're very open. I hope they're comfortable enough to come out, if that's the case. But at the heart, as a cisgender white dude, there's a story that I like, and that's all that matters. From the perspective of like this being a banned book, puzzled, angry, ashamed to be a white man.
That's a consolidated lyric. Ria, what was your emotional reaction?
Just happy, just joy. I mean, Kevin was talking about how he likes to bring joy. This is a book about joy, like from everything, from the way the story's told, the way it's written, to the illustration. Everything in it is so open and joyful. The way the book is put together, it's big, wide, open scenes. That's why it brings you sort of like, you have that sense of ease, you have that sense of joy. There are pages with the penguins on like their rocks and stuff, and it goes across 2 pages. It is all being thought out to make us feel happy and light and to feel comfort and love. Like everything about it, the way it's positioned, the language that they use is not only accessible for children, but it's purposefully so simplistic, the way they tell this story and illustrate it. And so it just makes me feel comfortable and happy. It makes me feel joyous that there's books like this out there for children and parents to access and read and learn together, and just think about how different families are cool and penguins are cool.
And even though it is very simple, easy language, it was still touching. It was still effective.
Absolutely. Like it's written so well. So I actually didn't read it until today with my daughter. Well, she's read it before, but I bought a new copy because we've only ever borrowed it from the library. I keep on showing it to the screen, I don't know why. And so I rebought it purposely because we've not got it out from the library for a while. Didn't read it until today. very deliberately because I wanted to get her like really like raw, honest reaction. So I just said, oh, I got this book. Should we quickly read it? I'm going to talk about it tonight. And so we sat after dinner and like read it. And I was like, did you like it? And she was like, oh yeah, I want to read it again. I just really love the penguins and the little baby's so cute. And they talk to the baby. So like the baby's in the egg and they talk to it by going squawk, squawk, and it goes peep, peep, peep. And, you know, she just felt joyous reading it. She just felt, you know, you could see how happy it made her and she immediately wanted to read it again. And that's so clever that obviously this book does have a message, but it is also just about bringing the reader a really fun, joyful story. And she can understand it with me reading it because she, you know, she's 5, so she can read some words, but not all of them. And she can understand it from the imagery and from what I'm reading to her. It's a really special book. I jumped ahead a little bit there, sorry.
That's all right. Diamond, what was your emotional reaction?
I mean, the same thing. There was joy, there was happiness. My son is 10 months and he now, when I read books, I sit in front of him and show him the book and he likes to turn the page. He knows that we're turning pages when we continue to read the story because he's ready to look at the pictures. But specifically when there are animals on the page, he likes to touch it. He likes to touch the dogs, he likes to touch the cats, he likes to touch the penguins. And just the fact that, you know, I may have not been able to enjoy that story with him if it didn't exist. Like this is something that a 10-month-old can enjoy because it's just so beautiful. And I'm enjoying it so much that he likes the different voices that are being made and the way that we say squeak squeak or something like that. He smiles so much and he has 4 going on 6 teeth, so it just that goofy grin and I don't know, I just love it. It was really fun to read it to him, and it just reminds me that there are so many books that I enjoy reading with him, and I would hate to not have that opportunity when it's just such a sweet story. And again, I'm all about the love. I love, and that's exactly what this book preaches, and shouldn't take that away from anybody. It's beautiful.
So Ria, you've already given us some of this, but wrapping up, what are the reasons people should read And Tango Makes Three? What do you hope people will gain from reading it or sharing it with their children?
I think people should read it and share it with their children. 1, because it's genuinely a good book. 2, because it's been banned, so we should show it some love and some support. And 3, it's really important that people know, children and grown-ups, that there are different types of families and different types of families are okay, and that we can create a safe world for them. And I think this is one of those occasions where it's a children's book that can make a difference. And that's the reason, you know, where I used to work, people used to talk about it all the time and recommend it. And I just think it's kind of like the best kind of book, isn't it?
Kevin.
Yeah, you know, I think I kind of keep going back to it's a lovely book, and I run the gambit with a 3-year-old, 10-year-old, and 12-year-old. And my 3-year-old happens to be obsessed with 2 things: dinosaurs and penguins. Penguins of Madagascar is a movie that's played on loop quite often. He is private. My oldest son is Skipper. His sister is Rico, I believe, and mom is Kowalski. I'm just dad. Somehow I get left out of the book or out of the story, but that's okay. And so I, you know, full disclosure, I read this book today as well. I'm not a preparer, so I was very overwhelmed when this came. As a podcaster, I'm very on the cuff. I don't have any notes in front of me except for the questions you already sent. So, like, not only overwhelmed by your questions, overwhelmed by the fact that people have notes.
Notoriously, though, I make notes and do not follow them, like, at all. Like, it's the most pointless exercise.
But yeah, I read it today, and the first thing I said was, oh, Logan will love this. Like, it's about penguins. And that's, going back to, I think, the few things that we've all said is at the core, this is a book about a very simple thing. It's about penguins and those penguins that are a family. The fact that they happen to be two dudes, that they're gay penguins, bruh, is just a thing. It just happens to be part of the story, and it just gives this story. And obviously it's based on real life, right? So like there's that, but it gives this story, levels or layers, like an onion, as Donkey would say. And it's just such a great book. First and foremost, because of the story, the illustrations, which I know everyone else talked about. It's one thing I really didn't talk about much. The illustrations are wonderful, and simple, and also inclusive. As the story about two gay penguins that raise an adopted child. All that is, I think, important for any kid to read about. And when they're little, all they care about is the cute little penguins.
Diamond. Why should people read this book?
First, I want to tell Kevin, your kid just doesn't want to change you. He thinks you're perfect just the way you are, which is why you're still just dad. He doesn't want you to be anybody else. So take it like that. So
I'll take it. Yeah. I am, out of the three kids, the other two were mama kids. He is a daddy's boy. He's the only one that clings.
He didn't want to change you. There you go.
I was like, I'm not even Dave. Like, I'll be the bad
guy. But okay, so why people should read this book? And I mean, the same thing that we all have said in this is that, we all got joy and happiness from reading this story, sharing this story with our little ones, sharing this story with others. And when I read this book, I read it right before this conversation again, and I'm with a couple of friends, and because of this book, it reminded one of my friends of Paul Castle, and she's like, hey, have you seen this guy? Like, that it already inspired another conversation about another book about gay penguins, and a person who is telling these stories about just love. Like, it's just these cute stories for kids. And I also own the books from Paul Castle, and just how adorable they are and how kids get to enjoy them. And not only do the kids get to enjoy them, but as a parent, I get to have more happiness in my life. I never thought that one person could take over my whole world the way that my son has. And just his smile every day lights up my world. I could be crying and then he smiles at me, and then I'm like, why do you have such power over my physical being? Because I don't even need to be sad anymore. I don't even remember why I was sad. Oh, you were crying for 15 minutes and gave me a headache? Well, I guess the world is fine now because you just giggled. Like, and for me to be able to give that to him because I shared something with him, like, why would you not want to do that with your kid instead of making it something negative? And it's just it's a positive light in the world, and we don't get enough of that because misery loves company. And I think that sharing it with each other and sharing it with your kids is a great way to spread the love. All you need is love.
And on that Beatlicious tone, thank you all for your valuable input. Kevin, tell the good listeners where people can find you and support your work.
I'll make it real simple. I'm getting ready to come back from a mental breakdown when it comes to the world of podcasting. So if you go to thatnerdykev.com or just follow me on social at thatnerdykev, you'll see all the things I work on. Most importantly, I guess, is Everything is Awesome, my long form interview podcast where Tonya was a guest. That episode has not aired yet because of said mental breakdown. It's great to live in America, huh? And my other podcast, which will be launching very shortly, Avatar State Radio, a recap of Avatar: The Last Airbender at that Kev, where you can get all those updates.
And Diamond, if you don't want to share your social media, what charities would you like them to support in your honor?
Well, definitely we have a voice. You can find them on social media, and I don't remember off the top of my head. I'm sorry. Sometimes they go by WAVE, which is WHAV. They are in Las Vegas. It is we have a voice nonprofit.org is their website. So that could be a place that you go to learn about their missions. Another one that I am closely related to is Club Christ as well. They are also a part of the Las Vegas community. Again, help children in underprivileged communities. And they are about helping kids with education and making sure that they have all of the tools and resources to thrive. And I mean, I think it goes really well with this theme of we have a children's book here and we want our children to thrive and we want them to be educated. So those two organizations would be the two that I would say. We Have a Voice nonprofit is WHAV nonprofit for the Instagram tag. So follow them on Instagram and check out the website.
And
Real quick, because now I feel like a super heel for plugging myself. So I'm also just going to real quick say the Headstrong Foundation, which is a local nonprofit it's actually in the Delco area, just outside of Philadelphia. They support families who are have somebody that's dealing with cancer. They put them up in a house. They get them to UPenn. My uncle passed from cancer several years ago, and they were very kind to my family. So Headstrong Foundation.
please don't feel like a heel. I set you up to promote yourself.
You did. I was the first one to go, and I have a lot of things
The
to talk about.
problem is I have nothing to promote except for other people's accomplishments that I am partially helping out with. So that's
they're
the biggest
noble. They're noble.
I know when you said that, I was like, oh my God, I need to think of something. While Diamond was talking, I was like, bloody hell, I was just going to be like, I too had a mental breakdown. So there's no episodes recently of Femon because I've had a 3-month mental breakdown. But come and listen to our old episodes. So don't worry. But also we have a voice on Femon and Tonya's amazing show, Active Activism. Do go and listen to that episode, but come and find us at femon.show. That's our website, and then you can find all our social media from there. Come on to my social media, Instagram. You won't really find me anywhere else, at Ria Carrogan. At the moment, well, this is coming out way after I've done it. I'm just posting cardboard creations that I've made for my daughter's birthday party that nobody cares about apart from me, but they're making me happy during my mental breakdown. So, fantastic times. And if we're also talking about other things, something very close to my heart is the Trussell Trust, which food insecurity and food poverty in the UK is absolutely horrendous at the moment. They're a wonderful charity who support families, more than families, but as we're talking about children's books, families, and it's so important to support them. And also in Comics in Motion, we recently lost an incredible friend, Steve, to cancer. So
Steve. Sorry.
Yes.
Sorry.
I mean,
he's a great dude. He was a great dude, a phenomenal dude. I'm sorry.
What a legend. What an absolute legend.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
if you can go and support Macmillan, please do, because the support they gave Steve's family was incredible. And, he's like a real hero in our geeky community. So go do that. And also the final thing I'm going to say, because I've been talking lots, is we should remember that children are born with love. Babies are born with love. And that's all they have. And any hatred that goes into them comes from us. So let's not do that. Diamond said it. Kevin said it. Love is love. Let's just feel love. Especially right now, because the life is shit. No, positive. Love is love. Children are born with love. Let's remember that.
Yes. Excellent note to end. That's it for today's show. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, comment, and share. Thank you for listening. More importantly, thank you for reading.